If you like this channel and what I do here, please help to support my work by checking out one of my books, available from Lulu Publishing and Amazon.com. Thank you.
Rebels are we, born to be free.
Hi folks, welcome to Electric Media Madness. Carl James here, joined by Dan Ryan. How you doing, mate?
I'm good.
You good?
Yeah.
We've watched a film which you'd never seen before.
No,
I have seen it many times. It's an interesting one because, obviously people are going to know from the title of the video. This is Woody Allen's Sleeper, 1973. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about, as well as talking about the comedy and all the different things that go on with the plot and everything that with Sleeper, but we also wanted to address this idea, which I very much believe it to be the case, is that Sleeper is actually sort of an overlooked science fiction classic. In the great tradition of science fiction films, it's very subversive. There are moments here in between the comedy and all that, which we'll talk about, but there are some great ideas. It's got good pedigree for science fiction as well, because it was loosely based on H.G. Wells' story, The Sleeper Awakes. So, it's very much there in terms of that classic idea of, and it's got the authoritarian nightmare. It's got these people living in this world where they, as long as you don't think and don't question anything and you're happily distracted, you're fine. But the minute you're in contact with anybody who's got any vague influence upon you to make you think or question things outside the box, then you're in trouble. You're reprogrammed. You're brainwiped, aren't you?
Yeah.
That's the world that they live in. So, do you want to just quickly just give our viewers a very, very brief synopsis of the plot? There's not really a lot.
Well, my friend just rang me like 10 minutes ago, and he asked me what I watched and what it was about, and I couldn't really form a description. Because this, I'm just like, I don't really know how to describe this movie, because it's a bit of a fucking weird.
It's very strange, very surreal.
Yeah.
The comedy is madcap slapstick, in the tradition of sort of the Marx Brothers kind of thing, which did have a huge influence on Woody Allen. And I think I also, having read various bits and pieces about Sleeper, he did try to sort of inject a lot of that kind of comedy and humour into the film. It's not just that. There's sort of sexual humour as well, isn't there, and things like that. So that's definitely not Marx Brothers. But the character he plays is Miles Monroe. He goes into the hospital to have an ulcer operation, and there's complications. And I think it was his cousin or something like that, put him into like cryogenic sleep or something like that.
Yeah.
He wakes up 200 years later, and the world has completely changed. There's been a nuclear war of some sort, which has changed the whole landscape. And they've got population centres. There's no more cities anymore. They've got population centres, which are effectively cities where people live. And there are some people living on the sort of outskirts, out in the sticks sort of thing and that. But it's run by the great leader, as they call him, this chap who sort of sits in a wheelchair. He's got his dog there. And the propaganda is that he's this benevolent, wonderful, all-loving, he's watching over them, all right, leader. We say he's watching over them, but it's more the powers that be are watching over everybody.
Yeah.
And the scientists that wake him up say that they are part of the underground, and they're trying to overthrow this authoritarian government that's controlling everybody's lives, to get sort of more freedom and all that kind of thing. And everybody has been sort of catalogued, identified, voice printed, all that kind of thing. So in order to carry out their plan that they're going to do, anybody who tried to get involved with doing it would be recognised. Which there's a big gaping plot hole at the end of the film, which when Diane Keaton's character Luna is actually involved in this as well, so they would have known who she was. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. And but they say, well, Miles Monroe, you haven't got your fingerprints and voice records, that they're not on the databases, so we can use you to carry out our plan. And is it called the Ares Project that they're trying to figure out what it is? They need to try and find out. I should know. I've watched this film many, many times. Had a momentary lapse there. And they, to cut a long story short, they find out that the Ares Project is because there was an accident and their leader was killed, and the only bit of sort of genetic material that's left of him is his nose. So they plan to clone the nose and create a new, grow a new leader. So that's really the mission that they've got to go on. In the middle of that, he goes on the run when the security forces turn up where the doctors work and that and live, and he goes on the run. He disguises himself as a service robot, a domestic robot, and he passes himself off as he goes to this house where Diane Keaton's character Luna, she's like a poet, an artist, and she's like really got her head firmly stuck up her arse, hasn't she? She's really just like full of herself and doesn't care about anything other as long as she's happy. And she has a party with all her friends there, and they're all sitting there with their orbs and in the orgasmatron and all the rest of it. She doesn't like the way his head looks because it looks like Woody Allen and not the way the robots really look. So she just wants his head replacing. So she takes to have his head replaced. He clearly doesn't want to have his head replaced because it would mean he's dead. So he goes on the run again. He kidnaps Luna and says, "Will you help me?" kind of thing. She plays along with it a little bit, doesn't she? Makes out that she's going to help him, but she doesn't really. First opportunity she gets, she dobs him in basically to the authorities. But when they turn up to get him, they say, "Well, you've been around the alien," as they call him, so you're unduly influenced now as well. So anybody who slightly thinks outside the box or has been exposed to any kind of subversiveness in any way, shape or form, you now suffer the same fate. So it really is an authoritarian dictatorship nightmare type place. Dystopia, for want of a better way of putting it. And so she has to go on the run with him as well. They find the house where he was originally at the beginning of the film. They hide out there, but the security police turn up. And there's a twist there because at that point she goes on the run. He gets captured. He gets sort of reprogrammed, and he's living like the brainwashed life in the population centre. Meanwhile, she's out in the countryside learning to be like Tarzan, swinging from ropes and all that kind of thing, and looking after herself, hunting and all that. And she gets sort of caught up in the resistance, the underground movement. And they're basically, for want of a better way of putting it, we will get into this, but they're a bunch of SJWs, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're like social justice warriors, like, but to the nth degree. They're like Marxist, socialist sort of. So they want to install like they've been reading Karl Marx and they want to install like a Marxist government after they've got rid of the leader. So they break out Miles. They get him away from the population center. They deprogram him, and so they go ahead with the original mission. Luna goes along with Miles Monroe. They go to the hospital where the nose is being kept. They try to kidnap the nose, and they do get away. And then Miles throws the nose underneath a steamroller, and it gets flattened. And that's the end of the leader. And it never really goes any further than that, does it? You have this wonderful little conversation in the car at the end with Miles and Luna, and she's like, "We're gonna, it's great. The leader's gone now. The underground can step in, and the SJWs can take over, and we'll be free, and all this kind of thing." And he's like, "Well, they're all as bad as each other," which is a fundamental, real sort of true science fiction. When you look at dystopia films and things like that, and authoritarian nightmares, he says, politicians, they're all just as bad as each other. No matter who you put in power, you'll have the same problem. Different political ideologies, but you'll have the same problem. Nobody will be free. You just got to get rid of the system altogether. And he's like, "I don't believe in God. I don't believe in religion. Don't believe in politicians. Don't believe in..." And she says, like, "Well, what do you believe in?" And he says, "Sex and death." Two things that come once in a lifetime. But at least after sex, at least after death, you're not nauseous. And then the film ends there. That's it. You really don't know what happens. What happens after the leader's gone and that. But it's very true to those science fiction principles. But let's begin with the comedy. I doubt very much you will have seen anything in this vein of comedy before. I might be wrong.
Not really.
Mm.
It's
excuse me sipping coffee while we're talking because I'm very thirsty. But yeah, go on.
But yeah, not really. Like this is it's like 50s, 40s kind of comedy, but in the 70s.
Yeah, and the music as well is very much like
Yeah.
that, isn't it? The jazz thing. We will talk about that. Woody Allen's role in the film. The all-encompassing auteur, which I do like that very much. I like that when somebody has a singular vision for something.
Yeah.
But we watched it sort of in tandem online. We watched it separately, but we were watching it as we were on Zoom as we were watching it.
Yeah.
And I was watching your reaction to it, and you really were laughing. I mean, I always laugh at the film. It's a great film, but yeah,
it's like fucking. It's just fucking ridiculous.
There's some fantastic stuff in it. There's obviously when they wake him up. First of all, he's covered in tin foil, and he's just like off the planet, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he's trying to feed that food to the security guard, and then he just puts some plate in his face. And I love the whole sort of the speeded up maniacal music when the chases happen and all that. Yeah, it happens. I think 3-4 times in the film, but it works. It works for the sort of the feel of the film. The bits with the every time somebody cracks out an orb, or you see the Orgasmatron in the corner, you're going to get that face off Miles Monroe. It's like when he hides in the Orgasmatron from the security police, and they pull him out, and he's like, and all of his clothes are burnt and everything. And Luna's party as well, where he's because he's obviously disguised as a robot, pretending to be a robot, but because he's human. I don't know quite how this thing works. I'm assuming it's like a psychedelic drug sexual type
thing, something like that.
They call it can I get a hit off that? So I'm assuming it's got those sort of drug connotations to it. And he's like, the more he's touching it, he's like, and then he's like trying to get on with with one of the women at the party, and he's like trying to snatch the ball out of the orb out of everyone's hands, and then they all just clear off for a swim, and they just leave him there like, It's fantastic. And another brilliant thing as well, which I know you like this bit, was when he was they were showing him all historical artifacts, like the chattering teeth.
Well, he just makes shit up, talking about what everything is from the past.
Yeah, all these historical figures, Charles de Gaulle and all that. And he's a French chef. And they show that clip as well, don't they, of World of Sport, and he's talking about Muhammad Ali and all that. And the doctor says, we've got this theory that people were made, if they'd committed a crime, they were forced to watch it as torture. And he goes, what does he say again?
It's like, that's what it's used for.
That's exactly what it is, yeah. A strange experience for you, because I know you did find it funny, but I really couldn't quite figure out what you made of it. It was just, did you think it was too, because I've shown the film to people in the past, and some have loved it, some have said, this is just too stupid for words. The comedy is just too stupid. It's not like, I just couldn't get.
That's what made it so funny, because it is just utterly fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. When he's in the hydrovac suit and it inflates and all that, and when he's got that jetpack, the rotating helicopter pack thing, and he's going like that, trying to get off the ground, and he's like, brilliant. It really is. Yeah. I mean, his mind, when he was thinking up the stuff for this film, where he got the ideas from it, I know he would have. Yeah. No, I mean that hydrovac suit is just so out there, isn't it? That inflated. It's supposed to be for space travel or something, but it's like works on water and all that. Just like, I don't. The idea is just so surreal. I know he did hang around with a lot of the New York artists and all that, Woody Allen and that. So maybe that sort of surrealist, arty world sort of was in there. I mean, a lot of his films were like that anyway. But before he went mainstream and started just doing rom-coms and musicals and weird shit, Yeah. I mean, his films have always been lauded up as classics, but this is from that golden era, the 70s of Woody Allen. Annie Hall, which is, I mean, people say it's effectively a rom-com, but it's a fantastic film. And it's from that sort of, roughly that era, it's one of those rare occasions. I was trying to think about where comedy and science fiction work really, really well. We've talked about The Orville, haven't we? That's an example of that. But Sleeper is very different humour to that. I thought about Red Dwarf, but again, there are elements of surrealism to Red Dwarf, like when we talked about in our earlier video, Rewatchable, about quarantine, because there's some surrealism to that, isn't there, with the Mr. Flibble and the gingham dress and all that. But again, it's still very, very different kind of humour. This is, and then I tried to think of films where comedy and science fiction have worked so well, where you've had a really good, solid, thoughtful science fiction story. People say about like Galaxy Quest, maybe, but that's more sort of parody. It's got a lot of science fiction to it, but in terms of, I think this stands up as being one of those films where, you know, hilarious film, but also a really good, thoughtful science fiction film is hidden underneath it all as well. Yeah. Because I love that idea, and I thought it was bizarre how just purely by happenstance I had my They Live t-shirt on today. Obey and conform, consume, stay asleep, and all that kind of thing. And that's the society that they live in Sleeper, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like you've got your telescope, and she says that, doesn't she, in the film, Luna? She says, you know, we don't want the, you know, we've got our telescreens and the orgasmatron and the orb and all that, and we don't, you know, why would we want anything else? You know, we're happily little sheep, happily distracted, not questioning anything. But it really comes back to bite her on the backside, doesn't it? So, I mean, that's really it in terms of what I wanted to say about it. I don't know what you wanted to say about it. I think you've just been dumbfounded by this film.
A bit,
I think you've really been dumbfounded. I could tell that you really enjoyed it. And I did think afterwards, I thought, making a video about this is going to be a tough one. I know I've got loads to say, but for you, because you really just can't get your head around it, can you?
Well, I just, like, I don't even know what to say. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. You know that you liked it.
Yeah.
But you really not entirely sure what to make of it.
It's just, I've never seen anything like it. It's fucking weird.
It is one of those films. I mean, I can sit there. It's my sense of humour. I can sit there and laugh, proper belly laugh at it, because I just think, and I've seen it so many times, but I never stop finding it funny. It's a hilarious film, but it holds up as a science fiction film as well, which is the title of this video. You know, it is very much an overlooked when people talk about science fiction films from that era. You know, they talk about late 60s, you know, 2001: A Space Odyssey. They talk about A Clockwork Orange, which was 2 years before this film came out. They talk about things like, you know, from the 70s, the dystopian nightmares. You know, you've got your Soylent Green and your Logan's Run and your Damnation Alley and your Silent Running, I suppose, Mad Max, you know, the apocalyptic type films as well. All that, some fantastic films from that era, science fiction films. And nestled in the middle of it all is Sleeper. I do very much think it holds it. It's in there with all of them. It's a very thought-provoking film. I more so now than ever in this current year with everything that's going on. I couldn't help but think about how, you know, this so-called benevolent government that you know, just wants to keep everybody safe and happy and all this kind of thing, and yet it's just in the process of, you know, whether that was a byproduct of it or whether that was intention, but ultimately they're an authoritarian nightmare, that government in Sleeper, aren't they?
Yeah.
They really are. You step outside, you question anything, you go against the narrative. You've had it. You know, you're dumb. You're brainwashed. You're destroyed or whatever. And I know we don't quite live in that world, but there's days when I feel like we're getting there. So Sleeper is prescient. It really is. And like all of those great films from that era are as well. Yeah. So I can't say enough good about it. You're just completely bemused, and it's a good job you've never looked at any Salvador Dali surreal artwork or anything like that, because you'd just be like scratching your head trying to think, okay, well, I really don't know what to think.
It's like, I know exactly what I've watched. I understand it, but like describing it and talking about it.
You've watched enough science fiction to know what.
Quite difficult after a first watch. Like, yeah.
But I mean, I would say that you know, all the good points of March. You found it funny. You appreciated the humour, which I appreciate that you appreciated the humour. You recognised the science fiction tropes of it as well, which you've watched a lot of science fiction as well as me. Different types, you know. As well, we've seen a lot of similar things as well. But so you got that, so that's good as well. You know, all the main things about it that would be all I would ever ask of anybody watching this film is if you can appreciate the humour, you can appreciate the themes behind it, then job done. You know.
Yeah.
A couple of things I wanted to mention as well. I love the aesthetic of the film as well. I know it's dated now, but I love the sort of sparse, the whites and all that. I know Woody Allen was very influenced by Kubrick's, 2001, A Clockwork Orange, the look of those kind of things. So he was heavily inspired by that for this film. So, and you can see that it's got that sort of weird look, that futuristic look that was there in the certain places that had futurism in their architecture, and he went to those places and filmed there. Some great location work. I love the look of the film. And the other thing I really wanted to say as well was the auteur theme. You know, he directed the film, he wrote the film, he was the main star of it. He was involved with all the music, played his clarinet as well, and that is mentioned in the film as well. They nod to that in the film, saying his characters plays the clarinet as well, and that, you know, he was there with the orchestras with the sound, and I believe he composed it all as well. The music, I'm not pretty certain he did, and it holds up. It's as a vision of a film. It was just great. It's one of those rare occasions you get somebody who knows exactly what they want out of a film, and they just get stuck in and do it. And we talked, didn't we, about how that would have worked? Somebody so heavily involved, because he's in almost every scene in the film. Yeah. And directing it as well. I've never quite understood how that worked when you're so heavily involved like that. But, you know, Woody Allen and Diane Keaton as well, for that matter, were good at thinking on their feet. They had a good working relationship together. They were in an intimate relationship about a year or two before the film was made, and they stayed good friends afterwards. So they worked well together. So they're good at improv and all that kind of thing as well. So anything that might have gone off the script a bit, you know, it worked. So maybe that's why it succeeded in that respect. Yeah. So yeah, those are the other points that I really wanted to bring up about it. Nothing else other than that, really. So before we disappear, and I'll go get my orb back out again, shall we score it out of 10?
I don't even.
Well, it's going to be hard for you.
How? I don't even know how. I can't even, like. There's not even a number coming to my head, just off the top of my head or what.
Right. Okay. All right then. I think it's pretty obvious what I'm going to say about this film. I think it's 10. I really do think it's a 10. It's a unique 10. It's got a lot of things in it that a lot of things haven't, and you know what traditionally I would, you know, it's got a really good script. Its acting's great. It's a bit over the top, but it works for the farcical nature of the comedy. But even in those moments where the seriousness needs to be delivered, it's done in a tongue-in-cheek way, but it makes the point. You know, this world doesn't work. You know, it's got to be gone. But what would you replace it with? You know, it's like you get rid of one dictator, you replace it with another. And we talked about this, didn't we? We won't mention names here on YouTube because of. We talked about like you've got your great leader, your dictator, and then you've got the SJW underground that's coming in afterwards to replace them. And we talked about the politics, current day politics. You know, trading one leader for another. Ultimately, they're all cut from the same cloth. Politicians always are. Yeah. You know, you'll never find greatness in politicians because they're ultimately they're self-interested, aren't they? It's all about money, power, and control. And Miles Monroe says this in the film, doesn't he? You know, you get one lot out, but just bring another lot in. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I like that. I like that message. Yeah. Yeah. So don't obey, and conform, and consume. Stay asleep. Wake up. Take responsibility for your own lives. Do what Miles Monroe does. He's a reluctant hero in this film. He doesn't really want to be. He says he's a coward and that, but he does. He does what needs to be done. And he figures it all out for himself in the end. He's like, well, I went against the authoritarian government, but I'm not going to get in with these SJW lots as well, you know, the underground. You know, you got to, life is your own journey. You got to go on your own path of sort of discovery and knowledge and figuring things out and understanding the world. And that's, I think if everybody did that, instead of being being led is the problem. You know, it's very difficult to avoid that sometimes in life, but people do need to start thinking for themselves. And I love that message with this film. Maybe it's just me that sees it, but I do know other people do appreciate Sleeper as it has appeared in quite a few science fiction polls for films, as well as being really up there as a great science fiction film from the era, irrespective of the comedy in it. So, yeah. So I'm going to give it a 10. So I suppose for you, I will just have to leave that one up in the air.
I'll give it it's good, watch it out of 10.
It's good, watch it out of 10. Yeah, that's better than nothing. Yeah, that's better than nothing. Yeah. And if there is anybody out there watching this video who appreciates the film as well, please drop a comment in, you know, talk to us about it, let us know what you think about it, what you think are the good things about this film and that, or even if you don't like it. We'd really, really appreciate some feedback. And if you do like this video as well, please like it, share it about. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, Dan and I really do appreciate it. We've got a small following, but it's a good following. And we really do appreciate everybody watching our videos and following what we're doing. Really, really does help. And we'll see you again very, very soon. Take care for now.
Goodbye.